I'll be reading the end of chapter 10 in Joe Campbell's Primitive Mythology. Again, we're reading about the thresholds of the Neolithic in this chapter, and we are currently on section 3, the Great Diffusion, and we are discussing the northeastward diffusion into China, Asia. We're in part 3 of that. 3. The hieratic city-state. In the historical records of Sima Qian, circa 145 to 86/74 BC, we are told of the concern of the legendary Chinese Yellow Emperor Huang Ti for accurate astronomy. The supposed date of this fabulous ruler would place him half a millennium earlier than the period of the painted pottery culture of Yangshou. He is, however, a sheer invention of the later Chinese scholars, and yet his supposititious interest in astronomy represents a basic inheritance of the celestial empire, and indeed derives from a very early date. Huang Ti, we are told, commanded Si Ho to take charge of the observation of the sun, Yi Chang, the observation of the moon, and Yu Chu, the observation of the stars. The sun, as the source of light, heat, and dryness, represents in China the masculine, positive force of the universe, the yang, while the moon, governing moisture, shadow, and cold, stands for the negative, feminine, the yin. These interacting produce the order, sense, direction, or way, Tao, of all things, which is represented geometrically as an ever-turning circle mixed of black and white, of yin and yang. Below the sun and moon are the 5 planets, each affiliated with an element. Mercury is the planet of the element water, the element of the north. Venus of metal, the element of the west. Mars of fire and the south. Jupiter of wood, which is east. And finally Saturn, the planet of the element earth, which is of the center. In India, too, there is a doctrine of 5 elements, old enough to have been studied by the Buddha, 563 to 483 BC, and traditionally attributed to a still more ancient sage named Kapila, who may have lived as early as the 8th century BC. The 5 elements in the Indian tradition are associated with the 5 senses. Ether, the first, is the element of hearing. Air, the second, the element of touch. Fire, of sight. Water, of taste. And earth, of smell. In the Occident, however, since the period of the Buddha's contemporary, Empedocles, circa 500 to 430 BC, we have heard only of 4 elements: fire, which is hot and dry, air, which is hot and moist, water, which is cold and moist, and earth, which is cold and dry. The systems differ, yet they are derived from the same root. And how far back should this root be dated? A clue is given by the harps in the royal tombs of Ur, to the sound of which the king and his celestial court died, and which were fashioned in such a way as to suggest that their harmony was that of the moon bull, whose body was their sounding chamber, and on whose golden head the lapis lazuli beard of the heavenly principle was displayed. The 5 notes of the Chinese pentatonic scale are associated with the harmony of the 5 elements and the 5 planets. In a Chinese musical treatise of the 2nd century BC, we read, if the note kung, C, equals the tonic, is disturbed, then there is disorganization. The prince is arrogant. If the second note, Shang, D, is disturbed, then there is deviation. The officials are corrupted. If the Qiao, E, is disturbed, then there is anxiety. The people are unhappy. If the Qi, G, is disturbed, then there is complaint. Public services are too heavy. If the U, A, is disturbed, then there is danger. Resources are lacking. If the 5 degrees are all disturbed, then there is danger. Ranks encroach upon each other. This is what is called impudence. And if such is the condition, the destruction of the kingdom may come in less than a day. In periods of disorder, rites are altered and music is licentious. Then sad sounds are lacking in dignity, joyful sounds lack calm. When the spirit of opposition manifests itself, indecent music comes into being. When the spirit of conformity manifests itself, harmonious music appears. So that under the effect of music, the 5 social duties are without admixture. The eyes and the ears are clear. The blood and the vital spirits are balanced. Habits are reformed. Customs are improved. The empire is in complete peace. The 5 social duties here associated with the pentatonic scale are the 5 activities of high importance under heaven, announced in the Confucian doctrine of the mean. They are namely the obligations between prince and minister, between father and son, between husband and wife, between elder and younger brothers, and between friends. Those, we read, are the 5 obligations that have great effects under heaven. Tuned to the tone of heaven and earth, we learn from another text of the 2nd century BC, the vital spirits of men express all the tremors of heaven and earth, just as several sithars, all tuned on kung, vibrate when the note kung resounds. The fact of harmony between heaven, earth, and man does not come from a physical union, from a direct action. It comes from a tuning on the same note producing vibrations in unison. In the universe, there is no hazard, there is no spontaneity. All is influence and harmony, accord answering accord. But this precisely was the view of the Greek Pythagoras, 582 to 507 BC, an echo of whose lore we have already heard in Plato's words concerning the pristine accord of man's nature with the harmonies and revolutions of the world. And the concept of musical accord in India is the same, where it is said that all this universe is but the result of sound. The Chinese terms for heaven are Tian and Shang Ti. The first is impersonal, denoting what is above. The second personal, and translated Lord. It is called heaven, Tian, when viewed from the point of its overshadowing the entire world, states a commentator to the Wu Qing. It is called Lord, Ti, when viewed from the point of its rulership. The Lord and ruler of the earth, the Emperor of China, which is regarded as the middle kingdom of the world, occupies his throne with the approval or by the mandate of heaven. He is the tonic note or pivot of the earthly harmony, and when attuned, his empire prospers. In the fabulous prehistoric period of Huang Ti, the people were able to control their passions perfectly, and there was such an accord between heaven and earth that the Middle Kingdom became an earthly paradise. Its inhabitants did not have to eat. Merely to sip the dew was enough. The 4 benevolent animals, the unicorn, dragon, tortoise, and phoenix, the 4 lords, respectively, of the warm-blooded quadrupeds, scaly animals, mollusks, and birds, appeared and took up their abodes in the gardens of the palace. Boons, moreover, proceeded from the understanding of the emperor, who taught the arts of divination and mathematics, composed the calendar, invented musical instruments of bamboo, taught the use of money, boats, and carriages, and the arts of work in clay, metal, and wood. He established the rituals of address to Shang-Ti, built the first temple and the first palace, studied and taught the properties of healing herbs, and when he died, at the age of 111, he left the nation established in a harmony that survived in the main for some 4,000 years. But on the other hand, when an emperor becomes unworthy of the mandate of heaven, inauspicious omens presently appear, and the Son of Heaven may be overthrown. We recognize, therefore, a deep and real anxiety in the words of Emperor Ming, 227 to 239 AD, following the solar eclipse of the year 233. We have heard, states Ming Ti, that if a sovereign is remiss in government, God terrifies him by calamities and portents. These are divine reprimands sent to recall him to a sense of duty. Thus, eclipses of the sun and moon are manifest warnings that the rod of empire is not wielded aright. Our inability to continue the glorious traditions of our departed ancestors and carry on the great work of civilization ever since we ascended to the throne has now culminated in a warning message from on high. It therefore behooves us to issue commands for personal reformation in order to avert impending calamity. The relationship, however, between God and man is that of father and son, and a father about to chastise his son would not be deterred were the latter to present him with a dish of meat. We do not therefore consider it a part of our duty to act in accordance with certain memorials advising that the grand astrologer be instructed to offer up sacrifices on this occasion. Do ye governors of districts and other high officers of state seek to rectify your own hearts? And if anyone can devise means to make up for our shortcomings, let him submit his proposals to the throne. The coming of this concept of the hieratic city-state to China is to be dated from the period of the blackware of the Lungshan culture, circa 1900 to 1523 BC, which now appears to have stemmed from the same centers of northern Iran and southern Turkestan, Tepe-Hisar, Turang Tepe, Shah Tepe, Namazga Tepe, Anau, etc., that sent the concept into India for the formation of the Harappa style. The characteristic fortress city of this Chinese stratum is perfectly quadrangular in form, bounded by a powerful wall of pounded earth and of considerable size. Sheep and horses have been added to the earlier barnyard stock of cattle, pigs, and dogs, and 2 of the pottery shards discovered show that writing was now known, in 2 scripts that have not yet been deciphered. The evidence of the next stratum, though, is much more abundant, the level namely of the white pottery of the Shang dynasty, circa 1523 to 1027 BC. Here the basic socio-political structure of the later Chinese empire can be seen to have been already laid. Brown casting tools and weapons of bronze, war chariots drawn by yoked steeds, a highly developed writing system, chamber burials and human sacrifices, an impressive architecture, gabled and colonnaded, advanced stone carvings, oracle bones, and a great passion for the hunt as a royal sport mark the flowering of an elegant, highly developed civilization, following essentially the lines laid down some 1,500 years earlier in Ur, Kish, Lagesh, Erech, and Nippur in Mesopotamia. An important feature of considerable interest, however, is the novel art style that appears at this time. For although many of its themes are derived directly from the West, entwining serpents, antithetical beasts with a human figure between, and the hero subduing beasts, for example. The style itself and the manner of composition through which its themes are rendered not only are distinctive, but also represent the earliest appearance anywhere of certain basic traits characteristic of the circum-Pacific arts, whether in the Old World or in the New. The first of these is the principle of the totem pole, a piling up of similar forms in vertical series. A second device consists in splitting the body to be represented either down the front or down the back, and opening it like a book. A third renders in a particular way decorative organizations of angular spirals and meanders. Furthermore, many of the Shang face formations and body postures are unmistakable, in whatever cultural context they may appear. Professor Hein Geldern, tracing the trans-Pacific courses of the various Far Eastern cultural influences, has pointed out, among other significant signs of a long-continued impact on America, art motifs of the Chinese 8th century BC, from the coastal states of Wu and Yu, in the Chavin culture of the same period in the Central Andes, goldwork and fine weaving now appearing in America for the first time, art motifs of the 7th and 6th century China in the Salinar culture of the north-central Andes, dating from the 1st centuries AD, art motifs of the 7th to 4th century China in the Tajin culture of Middle America, dating from circa 200 to 1000 AD, the art of the late Zhou dynasty bronzes and jades, 5th to 3rd centuries BC, reflected in the Ulua style of Middle America, circa 200 to 1000 AD, a brief break in the contact of the Chinese with America after 333 BC, when the seafaring state of Yeu in the southeast lost its independence, and the Dongsang folk of Vietnam in northeastern Indochina took over the commerce with such effect that their influence can be recognized from Panama to Chile and to the Argentine, particularly in techniques of metallurgy and ornamental metal designs. During the period of the Han Dynasty, 202 BC to 220 AD, a resumption of the Chinese voyages, and after circa 50 AD, with the conquest of Tonkin and North Annam by China, a probable end of the Dongsun trans-Pacific sailings. And finally, with the fall of the Han Dynasty, a passing of the lead from China to the Hinduized peoples of Southeast Asia, where Cambodia was the chief power from the 7th to 10th centuries AD, the contacts of these voyages with America perhaps then continuing until the death of Jayavarman VII of Angkor, about 1219 AD. And so we are not surprised to learn that the great high priest and monarch of the Golden Age in the Toltec city of Tula, the city of the sun in ancient Mexico, whose name, Quetzalcoatl, has been read to mean the feathered serpent and the admirable twin, and who was fair of face and white of beard, was the teacher of the arts to the people of pre-Columbian America, originator of the calendar and giver of maize. His virgin mother, Chimalman, the legend tells, had been one of 3 sisters to whom God the All-Father had appeared one day under his form of Sitlala Tonak, the morning. The other 2 had been struck by fright, but upon Chimalman God breathed, and she conceived. She died, however, giving birth, and is now in heaven, where she is revered under the honorable name of Precious Stone of Sacrifice, Chalchihuitzli. Quetzalcoatl, her child, who is known both as the Son of the Lord of the high heavens, and as the son of the Lord of the 7 caves, was endowed at birth with speech, all knowledge, and all wisdom, and in later life, as priest-king, was of such purity of character that his realm flourished gloriously throughout the period of his reign. His temple palace was composed of 4 radiant apartments, one toward the east, yellow with gold, one toward the west, blue with turquoise and jade, one toward the south, white with pearls and shells, one toward the north, red with bloodstones, symbolizing the cardinal quarters of the world over which the light of the sun holds sway. And it was set wonderfully above a mighty river that passed through the midst of the city of Tula, so that every night, precisely at midnight, the king descended into the river to bathe. And the place of his bath was called In the Painted Vase, or In the Precious Waters. But the time of his predestined defeat by the dark brother, Tzatzacoatl, was ever approaching, and knowing perfectly the rhythm of his own destiny, Quetzalcoatl would make no move to stay it. Tezcatlipoca, therefore, said to his attendants, "We shall give him a drink to dull his reason, and show him his own face in a mirror. Then surely he will be lost." And he said to his servants of the good king, "Go tell your master that I have come to show him his own flesh." But when the message was brought to Quetzalcoatl, the aging monarch said, "What does he call my own flesh? Go and ask." And when the other was admitted to his presence, "What is this, my flesh, that you would show me?" Tzatzacoatl answered, "My lord and priest, look now at your flesh, know yourself, see yourself as you are seen by others." And he presented the mirror. Whereupon, seeing his own face in that mirror, Quetzalcoatl immediately cried out, "How is it possible that my subjects should look upon me without fright? Well might they flee from before me. For how can a man remain among them when he is filled, as I am, with foul sores, his old face wrinkled, and of an aspect so loathsome? I shall be seen no more. I shall no longer terrify my people." Presented the drink to quaff, he refused it, saying that he was ill, but urged to taste it from the tip of his finger, he did so, and was immediately overpowered by its magic. He lifted the bowl and was drunk. He sent for Quetzalcoatl, his sister, who dwelt on the mountain Nonoalco. She came, and her brother gave her the bowl, so that she too was drunk. And with all reason forgotten, the two that night neither said prayers nor went to the bath, but sank asleep together on the floor. And in the morning Quetzalcoatl said in shame, "I have sinned. The stain of my name cannot be erased. I am not fit to rule this people. Let them build habitation for me deep underground. Let them bury my bright treasures in the earth. Let them throw the glowing gold and shining stones into the precious waters, where I take my nightly bath." And all this was done. The king remained 4 days in his underground tomb, and when he came forth he wept and told his people that the time had come for his departure to the Red Land, the Dark Land, the land of fire. Having burned his dwellings behind him, buried his treasures in the mountains, transformed his chocolate trees into mesquite, and commanded his multicolored birds to fly before him, Quetzalcoatl, in great sorrow, departed, resting at a certain place along the way and looking back in the direction of Tula, his city of the sun. He wept, and his tears went through a rock. He left in that place the mark of his sitting and the impress of his palms. Farther along, he was met and challenged by a company of necromancers who prevented him from proceeding until he had left them the arts of working silver, wood, and feathers, and the art of painting. As he crossed the mountains, many of his attendants, who were dwarfs and humpbacks, died of the cold. At another place, he met his dark antagonist, Tezcatlipoca, who defeated him at the game of ball. At still another, he aimed with an arrow at a large pocodal tree, and the arrow, too, was a pocodal tree, so that when he shot it through the first, they formed a cross. And so he passed along, leaving many signs and place names behind him, until coming at last to where the sky, land, and water come together, he departed. He sailed away on a raft of serpents, according to one version, but another has it that his remaining attendants built a funeral pyre into which he threw himself. And while the body burned, his heart departed, and after 4 days he appeared as the rising planet Venus. All agree, however, that he will presently return. He will arrive with a fair-faced retinue from the east, and resume sway over his people. For although Tezcatlipoca had conquered those immutable laws that had determined the destruction of Tula, assigned likewise its restoration. Quetzalcoatl was not dead. In one of his statues he was shown reclining, covered with wrappings, signifying that he was absent, or as one who lays him down to sleep, and that when he should wake from that dream of absence, would rise to rule again the land. He had built mansions underground to the Lord of Mictlan, the Lord of the Dead, but did not occupy these himself, dwelling rather in that land of gold where the sun abides at night. This too, however, is underground. Certain caverns lead to it, one of which, called Sincalco, to the abode of abundance, is south of Chapultepec, and through its gloomy corridors men can reach that happy land, the habitation of the sun, which is still ruled by Quetzalcoatl. Moreover, that land is the land from which he came in the beginning. All this, which in so many ways parallels the normal imagery of the old world culture hero myths, telling of the one who is gone, dwells underground in a happy, timeless land as lord of the realm of the happy dead, like Osiris, but will arise again, we can read without surprise. But what is surprising indeed was the manner of Quetzalcoatl's actual return. The priests and astrologers did not know in what cycle he was to appear. However, the name of the year within the cycle had been predicted of old by Quetzalcoatl himself. Its sign was one reed, which in the Mexican calendar is a year that occurs only once in every cycle of 52. But the year when Cortez arrived, with his company of fair-faced companions and his standard, the cross, was precisely the year one reed. The myth of the dead and resurrected God had circumnavigated the globe.